The murmuring in the lobby of the Lincoln Center in New York City ceased immediately when Emily Parker positioned the violin under her chin. The 9-year-old girl, wearing a light blue dress with her brown hair tied in an elaborate braid, seemed tiny on the immense illuminated stage. Her eyes, sightless since birth, conveyed a serenity that contrasted with the palpable tension in the packed audience. No one expected that the blind daughter of powerful Matthew Parker, the Wall Street shark, would be capable of making such an impact with just a few notes. When the bow touched the strings, something magical happened. A sweet and deeply emotional melody filled the space, silencing even the most skeptical. In the front row, Matthew squeezed the concert program so tightly that his fingers turned white. Beside him, Sarah Johnson, with tears streaming down her tanned face, smiled with pride that overflowed with each sigh. The video of that performance would reach more than 5 million views in just 48 hours. The little American Mozart, as the comments called her, wasn't just a viral phenomenon. It was the beginning of a revolution in the lives of 3 people who would never have imagined where those musical notes would lead them. Can you imagine what it would be like to develop such an extraordinary talent without ever having seen the world around you? What would it be like to perceive reality only through sounds, smells, and touch? That's exactly what our little protagonist faces every day, transforming her difference into a superpower capable of touching hearts with a depth that few experienced musicians can achieve. But to understand how we arrived at that historic moment at Lincoln Center, we need to go back 6 months in time, when it all began with a simple request during dinner in the penthouse of a high-rise in Manhattan, in the heart of New York City. Matthew Parker wasn't the type of man who was easily shaken. At 45, he had built a financial empire that placed him among the most influential investors in the country. His office on Wall Street, the financial heart of New York, was decorated with sobriety and elegance, reflecting his methodical and calculating personality. Tall, always impeccably dressed in tailored suits, with grey at his temples that gave him a distinctive appearance, Matthew was known for his coldness in negotiations and his almost supernatural ability to predict market trends. That Thursday night, while having dinner with Emily on the spacious terrace of his duplex penthouse with a view of the infinite lights of the metropolis, he could hardly imagine that his life was about to change completely. "Dad, I want to make a YouTube channel to play violin," Emily said suddenly, while playing with her fork over the plate of spaghetti and meatballs, her favorite dish. Matthew choked on his wine. "A channel? But honey, you're only 9 years old. Julia in my class has a makeup channel and she's my age." Emily argued with the impeccable logic of children, and teacher Jessica says my way of playing is unique. 3 years ago, when he noticed his daughter's interest in music, Matthew had hired Jessica Martinez, one of the most renowned violinists from the New York Philharmonic. Initially, he imagined it would just be a passing hobby, something to occupy his daughter's curious mind. To his surprise, Emily demonstrated a surprising natural talent. "I don't know if it's a good idea to expose you like that on the internet," he replied cautiously. "There are a lot of strange people out there, honey." Emily sighed in that way that only pre-adolescents can, carrying the world in a single exhalation. "Dad, I'm not going to be famous or anything. It's just to share music. Teacher Jessica said it could help me evolve faster." Matthew observed his daughter. Her eyes, a deep honey brown, didn't focus on anything in particular, but conveyed a determination that he knew well. It was the same he saw in the mirror every morning. Emily had inherited not only his physical traits, but also his obstinacy. After the tumultuous divorce from Amanda, his ex-wife who now lived in London, he obtained custody of his daughter and tried to compensate for the maternal absence with everything money could buy. However, Emily had never been materialistic. Her congenital blindness seemed to have endowed her with a special sensitivity to value what really mattered. And now, there she was, asking for something that couldn't be bought, an opportunity to express herself. "I'll think about it," he finally conceded. "I'll think about it," was the phrase Matthew used when he wanted to end an uncomfortable topic. But this time, Emily didn't give up. "Uncle Mike can help me with the technical part. He understands these internet things," she insisted, referring to Matthew's driver and personal assistant, who had become almost a family member in recent years. "Have you ever wondered what it would be like to have to deny something to someone you love deeply, but at the same time fear the risks involved? How to balance protection and freedom when it comes to allowing someone special to expose themselves to the world?" 3 days later, after consulting his public relations team and establishing strict privacy rules, Matthew surprised his daughter with an improvised studio in her room, equipped with high-definition cameras, professional lighting, and audio equipment that would make many professional musicians envious. "Oh my God, Dad, is this for real?" exclaimed Emily as she carefully touched the equipment, exploring every inch with her sensitive fingers. "If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right," he replied, trying to sound casual, but secretly proud of his daughter's evident joy. The first video was recorded that same weekend, Emily playing Vivaldi's Spring, a piece that she mastered with impressive sensitivity. Mike, the driver who really understood technology as Emily had suggested, carefully edited the video, adding only a simple caption: "Emily Parker, 9 years old, New York, USA." When he arrived home after a long day at the office, Matthew found Emily and Mike celebrating on the couch. "Dad, we already have 200 views. 200, shouted Emily, jumping with excitement. Matthew smiled, trying to share in her enthusiasm. 200 views didn't seem very impressive to him, who dealt with millions every day. But seeing Emily's genuine joy was enough to validate his decision. What none of them imagined was that this modest number would be just the beginning. In just 2 months, the Emily and Her Violin channel surpassed 100,000 subscribers. The combination of the undeniable talent of the girl, her inspiring story, and the rarity of seeing a blind child mastering complex pieces created a perfect storm on social media. Reports on major news websites contributed to amplifying the phenomenon. Matthew, initially resistant, began to notice how music was transforming his daughter. Emily had become more confident, more communicative, and most importantly, happier. Teacher Jessica reported impressive progress in her technical skills, motivated by the positive feedback from viewers. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, Matthew gave in to his daughter's request to record a video in Central Park, the green lung of the city. While Mike was setting up the equipment near the Bethesda fountain, Emily practiced some notes, adjusting to the acoustics of the open environment. "Dad, someone is singing over there," Emily said suddenly, turning her head in the direction of the sound. "It's beautiful." Matthew followed the direction indicated by Emily and spotted a woman sitting on a nearby bench, singing softly while strumming a worn guitar. She wasn't formally performing. She seemed to be just enjoying the day like any park-goer, but her deep and melodious voice had a unique timbre that stood out even from a distance. "Let's meet her," decided Emily, already walking towards the voice with the aid of her folding cane, which she insisted on using despite Matthew's attempts to hire companions. "Emily, wait," called Matthew, but it was too late. Emily moved with surprising confidence for someone who couldn't see, guided by the sound that attracted her like a magnet. The woman stopped singing when she noticed the approach of the girl with the violin in her hands. She was a woman in her 40s, with abundant curly hair tied in an unpretentious bun, sun-kissed skin, and eyes of a deep green that contrasted with her skin tone. She was dressed simply but colourfully. Faded jeans, a vibrantly patterned blouse, and several handcrafted bracelets on her wrists. "Hi," said Emily, stopping a few steps away from her. "Your voice is amazing." The woman smiled, immediately recognizing the girl's condition by the cane and the unfocused gaze. "Thank you, dear. And that violin, do you play?" "Yes, we're recording a video for my channel. I'm Emily." "Nice to meet you, Emily. I'm Sarah," she replied at the exact moment Matthew reached his daughter. "Sorry for the disturbance," he said formally. "My daughter was impressed with your voice." Matthew tried not to show it, but he was also impressed. There was something magnetic about the woman in front of him, an authenticity that contrasted with the artificial world he lived in, full of calculating people and rehearsed smiles. "What a beautiful violin," commented Sarah, observing the instrument that Emily carefully held. "Stradivarius." The question caught Matthew by surprise. Very few people would recognize the rarity of the instrument he had acquired at an auction in Europe. "Actually, it's a very good replica," he replied, intrigued by the musical knowledge of this apparent street singer. "You know about violins?" Sarah gave an enigmatic smile. "I was a violinist in my youth. Life takes its turns, right? Today I sing around here, doing what my heart tells me." Emily, excited about the unexpected encounter, had a sudden idea. "Could you sing with me in the video? I'm playing Amazing Grace in a violin adaptation. Do you know it?" "Do I know it?" laughed Sarah. "Southern girl that I am, I was born hearing that song. Have you ever felt that instant connection with someone, as if you already knew them from other lives, as if some people entered your existence at the exact moment you needed them, without any prior warning?" What happened next was magical. Without any prior rehearsal, Emily began to play the immortal melody of Amazing Grace, and Sarah naturally accompanied her with her powerful voice laden with emotion. The combination of the classical violin with that raw voice, which carried all the Southern heritage, created a unique version of the song. Mike, sensing the special moment, quickly adjusted the equipment to capture that improvised performance. Passers-by stopped to watch, forming a small circle around the artists. When they finished, spontaneous applause echoed through the park. "That was incredible," said Matthew, genuinely impressed. It had been years since he felt goosebumps while listening to music. Sarah smiled, a mixture of pride and humility in her gaze. "Your daughter is the one who's incredible. What talent this girl has." "Dad! We have to invite Sarah for more videos," exclaimed Emily, holding her new friend's hand as if she feared she might disappear. "Well, that depends on Miss Sarah's availability," replied Matthew, suddenly formal. Something about that woman disconcerted him, and he wasn't used to feeling vulnerable. "It's just Sarah," she corrected him naturally. "And as for availability, well, let's say my schedule is quite flexible." There was a lightness in her tone, an ability to laugh at her own situation that contrasted drastically with the habitual seriousness of Matthew's world. Do you perform professionally?" he asked, genuinely curious. Sarah adjusted the guitar on her lap. "I perform in the subway 3 times a week, at Times Square and Grand Central stations mainly. I also do some gigs in bars in Greenwich Village and the East Village. Nothing too regular." Matthew frowned, trying to process the information. It was difficult to reconcile that extraordinary talent with performances in subway stations. "And do you live off that?" "Dad!" Emily reprimanded him, noticing the indiscretion of the question. Sarah, however, didn't seem offended. "Live is a strong word, isn't it? I survive. I share a small apartment in Brooklyn with a friend. I do some waitressing jobs when money gets tight. But you know how it is, right? He who sings, his troubles flings," she completed with a wink. Emily, determined as always, insisted, "You need to come to our studio. We can record together for real." Matthew, taking his business card from his pocket, extended it to Sarah. "If you're interested, get in touch. We'll pay adequately for your time, of course." Sarah took the card and examined it with curiosity. Matthew Parker, CEO of Parker Investments, she read aloud. Wow, I'm talking to important people and didn't even know it, she joked. He's not important, interrupted Emily with the cutting honesty typical of children. He just deals with money. You do something much cooler. Sarah's genuine laughter echoed through the park, followed by a restrained smile from Matthew, who rarely allowed himself to show amusement in public. The way your daughter talks, I'm going to end up accepting the invitation, commented Sarah, tucking the card into the small, colourful fabric bag she carried. I hope so, replied Matthew, surprising himself with the sincerity of that desire. As they said goodbye, Emily hugged Sarah with the spontaneity that only children possess. You started smiling again, Dad, she whispered, as they walked back to the original filming location. I could tell by your voice. Matthew didn't respond, but felt something strange in his chest, a warmth he hadn't experienced in a long time. 3 days passed without news from Sarah. Matthew was surprised to realize how many times he checked his cell phone, waiting for a message or call that didn't come. Emily constantly asked about the park lady, and he was beginning to regret creating expectations for his daughter. On the morning of the 4th day, as he was leaving for an important meeting on 5th Avenue, Matthew almost collided with a familiar figure at the door of the luxury building where he lived, in the Upper East Side. Sarah, he asked, adjusting his glasses as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Good morning, she greeted with a smile. She wore a long, colourful skirt, a simple white blouse, and carried the same worn guitar. I hope I'm not disturbing, but I decided to accept Emily's invitation. You could have called first, he commented, consulting his expensive wristwatch. Oh, I tried, she explained, taking a crumpled piece of paper from her pocket, but your card got wet when it rained while I was playing in Union Square. I could only save the address. Matthew couldn't contain a smile at that explanation so distant from his structured reality. In his world, contact information was securely stored in the latest smartphones, cloud backups, and digital calendars. Emily will be delighted, he said, trying to disguise his own satisfaction. Unfortunately, I'm on my way to a meeting, but I can ask Mike to receive you and— No problem, interrupted Sarah, shrugging. I can come back another day. No! The response came too quickly, betraying his apparent indifference. I mean, there's no need. Mike can show you the studio, and you can start working on some material. I'll be back for lunch. As the driver drove the bulletproof Lincoln through the congested streets of New York, Matthew tried to concentrate on the numbers of the presentation he would give, but his mind kept returning to the image of Sarah in the lobby of his building, out of place, but perfectly at ease in her own skin. The day passed more slowly than normal. Twice Matthew almost called home to see how things were going, but restrained himself. When he finally returned around 2 p.m., he was greeted by the sound of laughter coming from the improvised studio in Emily's room. He stopped at the door, observing without being noticed. Emily was playing a lively melody on the violin, while Sarah sang a song he didn't know, something about the sea and longing, with typically southern words that sounded strange but enchanting to his northern ears. What song is that? He asked, finally announcing his presence. Dad! Exclaimed Emily, interrupting the music. Sarah is teaching me southern songs, things that aren't even on the internet. Sarah smiled, a little embarrassed for the first time. They're songs my grandmother used to sing in Georgia. Nothing very sophisticated. It's beautiful, he said simply, surprising himself with the sincerity. Have you ever noticed how people from completely different worlds can connect through music? How melodies and harmonies can break down barriers that words and concepts only strengthen? That afternoon, at Emily's invitation, Matthew cancelled his remaining meetings and joined the two for a musical improvisation. Although he didn't play any instrument, he let himself be carried away by the moment, even risking singing a few notes, when strongly encouraged. During a break, while Emily went to the bathroom, Matthew found himself alone with Sarah for the first time. "Your daughter is extraordinary," she commented, adjusting the guitar strings. "It's not just the musical talent, it's the sensitivity, the empathy." "She takes after her mother," he responded automatically. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure? Because as far as I could observe, you're identical. The same determination, the same furrowing of the brow when you concentrate, the same restrained laugh." Matthew blinked, surprised. No one had ever noticed these similarities. People always commented on how Emily physically resembled Amanda, with her wavy hair and delicate nose. "You're very observant," he commented. "When you sing on the streets, you learn to read people quickly," she responded with a shrug. "It's a matter of survival." There was something in that phrase that bothered him. The idea of Sarah needing to survive on the streets with all that extraordinary talent seemed a colossal waste. "Have you ever thought about recording professionally?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Sarah laughed, a melodious sound that seemed like music itself. "Of course I have. Every musician dreams of that. But in America, without connections, without money to invest, you know how it is." Actually, he didn't know. Matthew had never faced financial obstacles in his adult life. Born into an upper-middle-class family, educated at the best. Universities, his path had always been relatively smooth. "What if I could help?" The words escaped before he could contain them. Sarah stared at him, suddenly serious. "Help how? Finance an EP, perhaps? Get some contacts in the industry? I have a friend who owns Bright Records." "Why would you do that?" she asked, the distrust evident in her voice. "You barely know me." Matthew hesitated. Why would he do this really? Because he was impressed with her talent? Because Emily adored her new friend? Or was there something more, something he wasn't yet ready to admit even to himself? "Let's say it would be an investment," he finally answered, resorting to the safe vocabulary of the business world. "I believe in your potential." Sarah continued staring at him for a few moments, as if trying to read his true motives. Finally, a slow smile spread across her face. "You're a strange guy, Matthew Parker," she declared, "but I think I like that." Before he could respond, Emily returned, radiant with excitement. "I already know what we're going to record for the channel, a fusion of classical music with American regional. What do you think?" And so, without realizing it, a collaboration began that would forever change the lives of the three. In the following weeks, Emily's home studio became the center of a small musical universe. Sarah appeared almost every day, bringing new ideas, old songs, and contagious energy that transformed Matthew's sophisticated and somewhat austere apartment. The first video of the collaboration between Emily and Sarah, a thrilling version of Simple Gifts with Emily's violin and Sarah's powerful voice, surpassed 1 million views in just 5 days, a record for the channel. Complimentary comments flooded the page. "The best version of this song I've ever heard. Who is this singer? This duet is hair-raising." Many asked for more information about Sarah, wanting to know where they could find more of her work. Emily was radiant. Her channel now had more than 500,000 subscribers, an impressive mark for such a short time. But beyond the online success, the girl seemed happier, more confident, and more connected with her American roots thanks to the stories and songs that Sarah shared. Matthew, for his part, found himself subtly changing. For the first time in years, he came home earlier, eager for the musical sessions. Occasionally, he even cancelled meetings, something unthinkable a few months before, to participate in rehearsals or simply watch the two playing. The problem was that these changes didn't go unnoticed in his professional circle. On a rainy Friday, David Wilson, his oldest partner and college friend, appeared without warning in his office. "We need to talk," he announced, closing the door of the meeting room behind him. "I'm busy, David. Can we schedule for Monday?" replied Matthew, without taking his eyes off the computer screen where he was analyzing performance graphs. "No, we can't," insisted David, sitting down in front of him. "It's about this musical hobby you've picked up." Matthew finally looked at his friend, arching an eyebrow. "My daughter's channel? What about it?" "I'm not talking about the channel itself," clarified David, uncomfortable. "I'm talking about this street singer you've been promoting." "Sarah," corrected Matthew automatically. "Her name is Sarah Johnson." "Whatever." David made a dismissive gesture with his hand. "The point is that Richard Thompson saw the videos." Richard Thompson was the largest investor in Parker Investments, controlling about 30% of the company's shares. A traditional conservative man and extremely concerned with appearances. "So what?" questioned Matthew, although he already knew where the conversation was going. David sighed. "He's concerned about the company's image. Says the CEO of one of the largest investment management firms in the country shouldn't associate with, well, in his words, a person without preparation." Matthew felt his blood boil. "Without preparation? The man doesn't even know her." "That's exactly the point, Matthew." David leaned forward. "Nobody knows her. We did a basic search and found almost nothing about her. We only know that she came from Georgia about 15 years ago, worked as a cleaner, waitress, had some problems with late rent. She's not the type of person our investors expect to see associated with the Parker name." Matthew closed the laptop forcefully. "And since when do I need the investors' approval to decide who frequents my house or appears on a YouTube channel with my daughter?" "Since you decided to make it public," retorted David. "Look, nobody is saying you can't have your friends, but Richard is concerned that you're getting emotionally involved with this woman and it's affecting your business." "This is absurd." "Is it?" questioned David. "You cancelled 3 important meetings in the last month. You left early last Tuesday during the visit of the Japanese investors. You're arriving later, leaving earlier." "I'm spending more time with my daughter," defended Matthew. "Something I should have done a long time ago." "Emily or Sarah?" asked David directly. The silence that followed was answer enough. "Richard threatened to withdraw his investments," continued David after a moment. "And you know what that would mean for the company." Matthew stood up, walking to the panoramic window that offered a privileged view of the city. The rain fell mercilessly over New York, transforming the sky into a grey mantle. "What exactly does he want?" he finally asked without turning around. "For you to publicly distance yourself from her. No more videos, no appearances together, and especially to abandon this crazy idea of financing an album for her." Matthew turned, surprised. "How does he know about that?" David shrugged. "New York is smaller than it seems when it comes to the business circle. You talked to Paul Richards from Bright Records, didn't you? He's Richard's wife's cousin." Matthew ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. The business world was like that, a web of invisible connections where nothing remained private for very long. "So that's it? I have to choose between my business and my personal life?" "Don't be dramatic," replied David. "We're talking about a woman you met less than 2 months ago. Is it worth risking everything we've built because of this?" The question hung in the air like a loaded cloud. "Is it worth it?" Matthew didn't have a ready answer for that. Not yet. "I need to think," he said finally. "Don't take too long," warned David, standing up. "Richard wants a position by the end of the week." When he arrived home that night, Matthew found Emily and Sarah laughing in the kitchen while preparing something that smelled deliciously of cinnamon and herbs. "We're making cornbread," Emily announced enthusiastically. "It's a typical Southern dish. Sarah is teaching me." "Actually, there are a bunch of different things called cornbread around the country," explained Sarah, stirring a pot. "This is ours, Southern style, with corn kernels. Totally different from Northern cornbread." Matthew observed the scene, feeling a strange sense of belonging that he hadn't experienced in years. His home, usually so impeccable and cold, smelled of home cooking and resonated with genuine laughter. "Dad, are you okay?" asked Emily, noticing his prolonged silence. "Just tired," he lied, forcing a smile that he knew Emily couldn't see, but perhaps could feel in his voice. Sarah, however, observed him attentively. "Something happened," she affirmed, not as a question but as a statement. And then, before he could stop her, Emily dropped the bomb. "Dad, I had an amazing idea. What if Sarah came to live with us? We have so many empty rooms, and it would be much easier for us to rehearse." The moment couldn't have been less opportune. Matthew swallowed hard, feeling the weight of Sarah's gaze upon him. "Emily, that's not something to decide suddenly like that," he explained, trying to buy time. "Why not?" insisted Emily with the implacable logic of children. "You always say that quick decisions are the best in business." "People aren't business, Emily," Sarah intervened gently, saving him from the uncomfortable situation. "Besides, I have my own home, my independence. But you said you share a tiny apartment, and sometimes the electricity is cut off because your roommate forgets to pay," argued Emily. Matthew gave Sarah a questioning look, who shrugged as if to say, "Kids." "I think we need to have dinner," Sarah skillfully diverted. "This cornbread isn't going to eat itself." Later, after putting Emily to bed, Matthew found Sarah on the terrace, admiring the city lights with a cup of tea in her hands. "Sorry for the embarrassment," he said, joining her. "It's okay. Children are like that, direct and unfiltered," she replied with a smile. "But something has been bothering you. Since you arrived, what happened? Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you need to choose between the safe path you've always known and a new direction that seems uncertain, but strangely right? How would you decide between what you've built throughout your entire life and something new that makes your heart beat faster?" Matthew hesitated. Part of him wanted to share the ultimatum he had received, to vent about the pressure, about the suffocating expectations of the corporate world. Another part, the one that had built walls around himself for years, kept him cautious. "Work problems," he responded vaguely. "Nothing important." Sarah studied him for a moment, clearly not convinced, but respected his space. "You know what we say down south? Those who keep too much inside rot from within." The comment drew a reluctant smile from Matthew. "You have a saying for everything, don't you?" "It's our way of transforming wisdom into something that can be passed on," she shrugged. "When you don't have much, words become a treasure." The silence that followed was comfortable, filled only by the nocturnal sounds of the city. For the first time in a long time, Matthew felt that he didn't need to fill the space with words or actions. "Emily is right, you know," said Sarah finally. "You have a huge house for just 2 people. Matthew laughed. "Are you reconsidering her offer?" "No," Sarah firmly replied. "We need to keep some clear boundaries, especially with the work we're developing together." The work she referred to was the EP that Matthew had promised to finance. 5 original tracks that would highlight Sarah's vocal talent, with Emily participating in 2 of them. Paul Richards, from Bright Records, had shown genuine interest after watching the videos. "About that," began Matthew, feeling the weight of the conversation with David return. The phone rang before he could continue, interrupting the moment. It was Nancy, his secretary, calling. "Outside of work hours, something that only happened in emergencies. Sorry to disturb you, Mr. Parker, but I received a call from Ms. Amanda. She's trying to contact you urgently." Amanda, his ex-wife, Emily's mother. "What does she want?" he asked dryly. "She didn't say, sir. She just said it was about Emily and that she would try again early tomorrow." Matthew thanked her and hung up, his expression closed. "Problem?" asked Sarah. "Emily's mother, calling from England at an odd hour, as usual." "You don't get along." Matthew gave a dry laugh. "That's an understatement. Our separation 5 years ago wasn't friendly." She doesn't participate in Emily's life? Occasional visits, phone calls on special dates. Amanda chose an international career. When we separated, it was relatively easy to obtain custody, since she spent more time in airports than at home. There was a pause while Sarah absorbed the information. Does she know about the channel? About Emily's success? Probably. It's everywhere. Sarah nodded, thoughtful. And about me? The question hung in the air, loaded with unspoken meanings. About Sarah's increasingly constant presence in their lives. About the way Emily had quickly become attached to her, as if filling a void left by the absent mother. About whatever was being born between Matthew and Sarah, still unnamed, but undeniably present. Would that bother you? Asked Matthew, studying her reaction. Would it bother you? Retorted Sarah, always direct. Before Matthew could respond, they heard a noise coming from Emily's room. They found the girl sitting on the bed, crying silently. Darling, what happened? Asked Matthew, sitting next to his daughter. I had a nightmare, explained Emily, wiping away her tears. I dreamed that Mom came back and took away everything we built, the channel, the music. Sarah. Matthew and Sarah exchanged concerned looks. Children had a frightening way of sensing storms forming on the horizon. It was just a bad dream, he consoled, hugging his daughter. Nobody is going to take anything away from you. But as he said this, an uneasiness grew inside him. Amanda's unexpected phone call, Richard Thompson's ultimatum, the uncertainties about the future. Suddenly, it seemed that the world they had so carefully built in recent months was in danger, and he wasn't sure if he would be able to protect it. The dreaded phone call from Amanda came the next morning, while Matthew was having coffee. Emily was still sleeping, recovering from the agitated night, and Sarah had left early to resolve pending matters, as she had vaguely explained. We need to talk about our daughter, announced Amanda without preamble, her American accent slightly modified by the years living in England. Good morning to you too, Amanda, replied Matthew dryly. What's the matter now? This YouTube channel, Matthew. Seriously. Exposing our visually impaired daughter to millions of people. The deliberate choice of the word impaired instead of blind, a term that Emily preferred for its simplicity, already indicated that Amanda was in attack mode. Emily is not being exposed, he defended. She's sharing her talent, gaining confidence. The comments are monitored, her identity is protected. And this woman who appears in the videos, who is she exactly? There it was, the real reason for the call. Sarah is a talented musician who is collaborating with Emily, he replied, keeping his voice neutral. Collaborating? Is that what they're calling it now? The sarcasm in Amanda's voice was cutting. Matthew, we're adults. I don't care who you get involved with, but when it affects our daughter... It's not negatively affecting Emily in any way, he interrupted. On the contrary, Sarah has brought a new dimension to her music, to her connection with American culture. Which you never cared about before, by the way, added Amanda. Since when does the great executive Matthew Parker care about American regional music? About folk and bluegrass? Let's be honest, your interest is in this street singer. Don't talk about her like that. Matthew's voice hardened. Oh, we've touched a sensitive point, provoked Amanda. Confirms my suspicions. What do you want, Amanda? He asked, tired of the game. I'm coming back to the States next week permanently. I got a transfer to the New York office. The news hit Matthew like a punch. Amanda had left the United States precisely to advance her international career, claiming that the country didn't offer the opportunities she deserved. Why? I thought your great career was incompatible with living here. Priorities change. I reconsidered the importance of being close to my daughter. What a coincidence this happens just when Emily is gaining recognition, he observed, unable to contain his cynicism. Think what you want, retorted Amanda. The fact is that I want to resume my role in Emily's life, and I'm going to judicially request a review of custody. What? There's no justification for that. No. How about exposing a blind child on the internet without the mother's consent? How about the constant presence of a stranger in her life without any background check? Or maybe the fact that you're clearly emotionally involved with this woman, compromising your judgment about what's best for Emily. Matthew felt the blood freeze in his veins. The same arguments that Richard Thompson had used against Sarah, now in Amanda's mouth, but with potentially much more devastating consequences. "You wouldn't do that," he said, his voice low. "Emily is happy here, stable. Taking her from this now would be cruel." "I don't want to take her from you, Matthew." Amanda's voice softened slightly. "I want shared custody, but with some conditions." "Which ones?" "The channel continues, since it seems important to her. But without this woman, no more Sarah, no involvements that might confuse Emily about family structure." Amanda's ultimatum sounded strangely similar to Richard Thompson's. Suddenly, the whole world seemed to be conspiring to keep Sarah away from their lives. "I'll arrive on Sunday," continued Amanda. "I hope by then you'll have made the right decision for our daughter's sake." The call ended, leaving Matthew with a sense of helplessness he hadn't experienced since the first days after Emily's blindness was diagnosed. "Dad?" He turned to find Emily standing in the kitchen doorway, still in pajamas, her face marked by sleep. How much had she heard? "Good morning, Princess," he greeted, trying to sound normal. "Did you sleep well after the nightmare?" Emily ignored the question. "Was that Mom on the phone? Is she coming back?" There was no point in hiding it. Emily had always had an almost supernatural ability to sense when something was wrong. "Yes, it was her. She's coming back to live in New York." Emily's face remained expressionless for a moment, processing the information. "Because of me." "She misses you," replied Matthew, opting for a half-truth. "Now that I'm famous," commented Emily, with a perception that sometimes frightened Matthew. "Before it didn't matter." "Emily, I heard, Dad," she interrupted, "about Sarah. Mum doesn't want her to participate in the videos anymore, does she?" Matthew sighed. "It's complicated, honey." "No, it's not," retorted Emily, her voice trembling. "You adults are the ones who complicate everything. Sarah makes me happy. She makes you happy too. I can see that. I hear it in your voice when you talk to each other. Why does Mom want to ruin that? Have you ever stopped to think how children often see complex situations with a clarity that adults have lost? How they manage to reduce seemingly complicated issues to their simplest essence? What can we learn from this vision, uncontaminated by layers of social conveniences and fears accumulated throughout life? "Your mother wants what's best for you," Matthew replied automatically, repeating what all co-parenting manuals said after divorce. "No, she doesn't," replied Emily with cutting frankness. "She wants what's best for her. She always has." Matthew didn't know what to answer. How to protect Emily from the truth without underestimating her intelligence. How to navigate this minefield of divided loyalties and conflicting expectations. At that moment, his phone rang again. It was David. "Richard wants an answer today," announced his partner without preamble. "Are you going to finance her album or not?" Matthew looked at Emily, who remained standing in the kitchen doorway, a determined expression on her face, even with eyes empty of vision. "I need more time," he replied. "There is no more time," insisted David. "It's now or never. Life sometimes places us at crossroads where all options seem impossible, where each path involves some kind of loss." That afternoon, while trying to focus on work in his office, Matthew received an unexpected message from Sarah. "We need to talk. I'm in the reception of your building." When he met her in the elegant meeting room with a view of Central Park, Sarah seemed different. She wore a simple white blouse and jeans, without her usual colourful accessories. Her expression was serious, almost solemn. "I'm going to step away," she announced without beating around the bush as soon as they were alone. "What?" Matthew's surprise was genuine. From the channel. From you. Both. Why? He asked, stunned. What happened? Sarah sighed, running her hand through her curly hair. I received a call today from a woman who identified herself as Amanda Parker's lawyer. What? The indignation in Matthew's voice was palpable. She didn't waste any time. She made some insinuations, continued Sarah, about my past, about my intentions. She suggested that I could face legal problems if I continued interfering in the family structure. That's intimidation, protested Matthew. It has no legal basis whatsoever. It doesn't matter, replied Sarah, tired. Matthew, I don't have the structure to fight against people like you. People like us. Rich people. Influential. With expensive lawyers and connections everywhere. You think I don't know what's going on? Your partner also called me. David called you? Matthew's surprise was genuine. Last night. He was quite clear about how my presence is affecting your corporate image. Matthew felt a wave of shame and anger. Everyone seemed to be deciding for him, manipulating the situation behind his back. Sarah, let's not let them dictate the rules. We can fight this. She smiled sadly. That's the point, Matthew. I don't want to fight. It's not worth it. Not worth it, he repeated, feeling as if he'd been slapped. What we've been building, what we're feeling, isn't worth it. Emily is worth it, replied Sarah firmly, and that's exactly why I'm stepping away. She's already had too many losses in her life to be thrown into the middle of a battle between adults, but she adores you. She'll be devastated. She'll get over it with time. She's young, resilient, and she'll have her mother back in her life. This isn't fair, protested Matthew, feeling helpless. Life rarely is, replied Sarah with a resigned shrug. Look, I've been through worse things. I've survived being homeless, going hungry, prejudices you can't imagine. I'll survive this too. It's not just about surviving, Sarah, argued Matthew, his frustration growing. It's about living fully, about not letting others dictate who we can love, who we can work with. Sarah studied him for a long moment. Is that really what you believe? Or are they just pretty words? What do you mean? If you really believe what you're saying, then why haven't you made a decision yet? Why are you allowing your partner, your investors, and your ex-wife to control your choices? The truth in her words hit Matthew like lightning. She was right. Despite all his supposed independence, all his power as CEO of a successful company, he continued to allow others to direct his life out of fear of disappointing, of losing status, of facing conflict. You're right, he finally admitted. I've been living for others' approval. We all need approval, Matthew, replied Sarah softly. The question is, from whom? The question hung between them like an unfulfilled promise. Don't go, he asked simply. Give me a reason to stay, she challenged. A real reason, not based on fear or guilt or obligation. At that moment, Matthew's cell phone rang again. It was Emily. Dad! Her voice sounded strangely excited. Teacher Jessica had an amazing idea. We're going to do a benefit concert at Lincoln Center for visually impaired children. She's already talked to the director, who loved the idea. It will be broadcast live on the channel. Isn't that great? Emily's excitement was contagious, even through the phone. Matthew couldn't help but smile despite the tension of the moment. That's wonderful, dear. I want Sarah to sing, continued Emily. I already have the perfect song for us. Is she there with you at the office? Mike told me she went to meet you. Matthew looked at Sarah, who could hear the conversation due to their proximity. Yes, she's here, he replied. Put her on. I need to tell her the rest of the plan. Matthew extended the phone to Sarah, who hesitated for a moment before accepting. Hi, little one, she greeted, her voice instantly softening. As Sarah listened to Emily's enthusiastic explanation about the concert, Matthew observed the emotions passing across her expressive face: surprise, tenderness, hesitation, and finally, a reluctant surrender. It's a beautiful idea, Emily, she said finally, but I don't know if I'll be able to participate." Emily's response from the other end of the line was loud enough for Matthew to hear. "Why not? You promised you'd teach me to sing." "Like you. A promise is a promise." Sarah looked at Matthew, a silent question in her eyes. He nodded slowly. "You're right, Emily," Sarah finally replied. "A promise is a promise. We'll talk about it when I get back, okay?" After hanging up, Sarah returned the phone to Matthew. "Your daughter is impossible to refuse. Like her father," he joked, trying to ease the tension. She smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "This doesn't solve our problem, Matthew." "Maybe it does," he replied, an idea forming in his mind. "What if we used this concert as an opportunity, a public declaration?" "What kind of declaration?" "The kind that makes it clear to Amanda, to Richard Thompson, to the whole world, that our choices are our own, that we're not ashamed of what we've built together." Sarah studied him skeptically. "You're talking about risking everything. Your company, custody of Emily." "I'm talking about fighting for what matters," he corrected, "for the first time in my life." There was a determination in his eyes that Sarah had never seen before, a certainty that replaced the usual hesitation when it came to matters outside the financial world. "The performance is in 2 weeks," informed Matthew. "Enough time to prepare everything, musically and legally." "Legally? I'll hire the best lawyers to protect Emily's custody. And as for the company, well, I can always start another one if necessary." The ease with which he spoke of giving up his financial empire left Sarah speechless. "You would really do that?" she finally asked. "Why?" Matthew moved closer, taking her hands in his. "Because I've finally found something that money can't buy, something that no professional success has ever given me, a true family. You, me, and Emily. We've created something special, something worth defending." Have you ever felt that moment of absolute clarity when you finally see what really matters? When the complications of daily life, social expectations and internal fears dissipate, revealing what the heart has known all along. The 2 weeks that followed were intense. Amanda arrived as promised, initially hostile and determined to follow through with the threat of custody review. However, upon seeing Emily playing violin with Sarah, witnessing the genuine connection between them and her daughter's evident happiness, something changed. Not a complete surrender, but the beginning of an understanding. Richard Thompson, on the other hand, remained adamant. As he had threatened, he withdrew his investments from Parker Investments, causing a temporary drop in the company's shares. David, initially furious, began to change his stance when new investors, attracted by the positive publicity of Matthew's involvement with the inclusive musical project, showed interest. And finally, the big day arrived. Lincoln Center in New York, with its imposing architecture, was completely packed. The benefit concert, Music for All Senses, had attracted not only families of visually impaired children, but also celebrities, journalists, and music lovers in general, curious about the viral phenomenon that Emily Parker had become. In the front row, Amanda watched with an indefinable expression, a mixture of maternal pride and reluctant resignation. Next to her, David seemed genuinely moved, having finally understood that Matthew's new direction wasn't a passing whim, but a profound transformation. After several moving performances by young musicians with various disabilities, the moment everyone was waiting for arrived. The presenter announced, "And now Emily Parker on violin, accompanied by Sarah Johnson." The applause was deafening when Emily entered the stage, guided by Sarah. The girl wore an elegant light blue dress, while Sarah had opted for a long dress in earthy tones, adorned with embroidery typical of Southern craftsmanship. But before they began to play, something unexpected happened. Matthew Parker, always reserved and averse to public appearances, went up on stage. The murmuring in the audience increased. The powerful CEO, dressed not in his usual impeccable suit, but in a simple white shirt and dress pants, took the microphone. "Good evening," he began, his voice slightly trembling. Something unprecedented for someone who was used to commanding board meetings with absolute confidence. "I wasn't scheduled to speak today, but I felt I needed to share something with you." The theatre fell completely silent. 6 months ago, when my daughter Emily asked to create a YouTube channel, my first reaction was fear. Fear of exposure, fear of the unknown, fear of losing control. Fortunately, for the first time in my life, I chose to listen to my heart instead of reason. Matthew paused, looking tenderly at Emily. What happened next was extraordinary. Emily not only shared her talent with the world, but taught me something I had forgotten in years of numbers, graphs, and corporate meetings. The ability to truly listen. To listen not just with the ears, but with the heart. His voice faltered slightly, but he continued. And then, by a twist of fate, we met Sarah, an extraordinary woman who entered our lives, bringing not only her music, but also a new perspective. She showed me that there's a whole world of sounds, colors, and feelings that I had been ignoring in my pursuit of success and security. Matthew looked directly at Sarah, who watched him with tear-filled eyes. In recent days, I've faced difficult choices, pressures from all sides to decide what was most important in my life. And today, before all of you, I want to declare my choice. I choose music instead of silence. I choose authenticity instead of appearances. I choose love instead of fear. A murmur ran through the audience. In the front row, Amanda lowered her gaze. David smiled discreetly. Many have asked me why a financial market executive would now be so involved with music. The answer is simple. Because I finally learned to listen, and what I heard changed my life forever. Matthew extended his hand to Sarah, who hesitated for a moment before accepting it and joining him at the center of the stage. This extraordinary woman, whom some tried to judge by her origin, by her past, for not belonging to our social circle, possesses a gift that no MBA or executive position could buy. The gift of transforming musical notes into pure emotions. The gift of seeing beauty where others see only differences. The gift of teaching a blind girl to see the world through sounds. Emily, who had remained quiet beside them, suddenly flashed a radiant smile, as if she could see the historic moment they were creating. Today, I want to publicly thank Sarah for coming into our lives, for teaching me that family isn't just what is given to us by blood, but what we build with love each day. And I want to make it clear to everyone that she is part of our family now, no matter what they say, no matter who disapproves. Amanda shifted uncomfortably in her seat. However, to Matthew's surprise, her eyes showed not anger, but a strange understanding, as if something inside her finally recognized the truth in his words. "And now," concluded Matthew, "I leave you with the real talent of tonight. My daughter Emily, who taught me to listen with my heart, and Sarah, who showed me the music I never knew I needed." As he left the stage under emotional applause, Matthew felt a lightness he had never experienced before. The sensation of finally being true to himself, regardless of the consequences. Emily positioned the violin under her chin with the confidence of someone born to be there. Sarah adjusted the microphone and before beginning announced, "The song we're going to present now is an original composition. Emily and I wrote it together in the last few weeks. It's called Seeing with the Heart, and it's dedicated to all those who, like us, found a new family when they least expected it." The first notes from Emily's violin filled the theatre with a sweet and melancholic melody, evoking longing and hope at the same time. When Sarah's voice joined the instrument, many in the audience couldn't contain their tears. The combination of Emily's pure and innocent talent with Sarah's experienced and emotionally charged voice created something magical, a bridge between different worlds, uniting generations, social classes, and life experiences. Backstage, Matthew watched the performance with his heart overflowing with emotion. For the first time, he didn't care what others thought about the consequences for his career, about society's judgment. For the first time, he felt completely present in the moment, without anxiety about the future or regrets about the past. When the music came to an end, Lincoln Center exploded in applause. Emily and Sarah, hand in hand, took a bow. And then, in a spontaneous gesture that no one expected, Emily extended her hand in the direction where she knew her father was. "Come, Dad," she called. "You're part of this too." Reluctant at first, but unable to deny that request, Matthew returned to the stage. The three, holding hands, received the standing ovation that lasted several minutes. In the front row, Amanda stood up too, with tears in her eyes, not tears of defeat, but of a newly discovered understanding. Next to her, David applauded enthusiastically, already mentally planning how to transform that moment into a marketing opportunity for the company. In the days that followed, the video of the performance and Matthew's speech went viral, surpassing all previous records of the channel. Emotional comments flooded the page, many highlighting how the story had touched their own lives, inspiring them to make more authentic choices. To everyone's surprise, Amanda withdrew the threat of custody review. After a long conversation with Matthew and, more importantly, with Emily, she understood that her daughter had found a stability and happiness that would be cruel to interrupt. Amanda rented an apartment nearby and established a routine of frequent visits, slowly rebuilding her relationship with her daughter. Richard Thompson kept his word and withdrew his investments, causing some difficult weeks for Parker Investments. However, the positive publicity from the benefit event and Matthew's integrity attracted new investors, including international funds focused on companies with social responsibility. In 6 months, the company not only recovered its value, but was stronger than ever, now with a special division dedicated to investments in cultural projects. As for Sarah, her EP was finally released by Bright Records, with Emily participating in 2 tracks. It became an immediate success, especially after the story behind its creation became known. Invitations for performances began to appear, not only in the United States but also abroad. However, the most significant change was in the small things of everyday life. The mansion on the Upper East Side, once so imposing and cold, now echoed with music and laughter. Sarah didn't move in permanently. She kept her small apartment in Brooklyn, valuing her independence, but spent most of her time with Matthew and Emily, creating with them a family that defied conventional definitions. On a quiet afternoon, 6 months after the concert at Lincoln Center, Matthew found Emily and Sarah on the terrace, composing a new song. He stopped to observe them, amazed by the naturalness of the scene, by the simple happiness that was now part of his life. Emily, sensing his presence, turned in his direction. "Dad, I think we found the perfect name for Sarah's next album." "What is it?" he asked, approaching. "The Music of Hearts," replied Emily with a radiant smile. "Because that's what we are now, 3 hearts that found their music together." Matthew looked at Sarah, who returned his gaze with a serene smile, and knew that all the difficult choices, all the losses and gains had been worth it. Because in the end, true success isn't in the numbers of a bank account or an imposing position, but in the courage to listen and follow the music of one's own heart, even when it leads us down paths we never imagined we would travel.